Hello, we're back again for Darren Shan's Cirque de Freak, Chapter 2 and 3. Okay. We had Mr. Dalton again after lunch for history. We were studying World War II. I wasn't too keen on it, but Steve thought it was great. He loved anything to do with killing and war. He often said he wanted to be a mercenary soldier, one who fights for money when he grew up, and he meant it. We had maths after history, and incredibly, Mr. Dalton for a third time. Our usual maths teacher was off sick, so others had been filling in for him as best they could all day. Steve was in seventh heaven, his favourite teacher 3 classes in a row. It was the first time we'd had Mr. Dalton for maths, so Steve started showing off, telling him where we were in the book, explaining some of the trickier problems, as though speaking to a child. Mr. Dalton didn't mind. He was used to Steve and knew exactly how to handle him. Normally, Mr. Dalton runs a tight ship. His classes are fun, but we always come out of them having learned something. But he wasn't very good at maths. He tried hard, but we could tell he was in over his head, and while he was busy trying to come to grips with things, his head buried in the maths books, Steve by his side making helpful suggestions, the rest of us began to fidget and talk softly to each other and pass notes around. I sent a note to Alan, asking to see the mysterious piece of paper he'd brought in. He refused at first to pass it around, but I kept sending notes, and finally he gave in. Tommy sits just 2 seats over from him, so he got it first. He opened it up and began studying it. His face lit up while he was reading, and his jaw slowly dropped. When he passed it on to me, having read it 3 times, I soon saw why. It was a flyer, an advertising pamphlet for some sort of travelling circus. There was a picture of a wolf's head at the top. The wolf had its mouth open and saliva was dripping from its teeth. At the bottom were pictures of a spider and a snake, and they looked vicious too. Just beneath the wolf, in big red capital letters, were the words, Cirque de Freak. Underneath that, in smaller writing, for 1 week only, Cirque de Freak. See, Sive and Caesar, the twisting twins, the snake boy, the wolf man, Goethe Teeth, Larton Creepsley and his performing spider, Madame Octa, Alexander Ribs, the bearded lady, Hans, Ramus Twobbelis, world's fattest man. 2 bellies, that is. Beneath all that was an address where you could buy tickets and find out where the show was playing, and right at the bottom, just above the pictures of the snake and spider. Not for the faint-hearted. Certain reservations apply. Cirque de Freak, I muttered softly to myself. Cirque was French for circus. Circus of freaks. Was this a freak show? It looks like it. I began reading the flyer again, immersed in the drawings and descriptions of the performers. In fact, I was so immersed I forgot about Mr. Dalton. I only remembered him when I realised the room was silent. I looked up and saw Steve standing alone at the head of the class. He stuck out his tongue at me and grinned. Feeling the hairs on the back of my neck prickle, I stared over my shoulder, and there was Mr. Dalton standing behind me, reading the flyer, lips tight. "What is this?" he snapped, snatching the paper from my hands. "It's an advert, sir," I answered. "Where'd you get it?" he asked. He looked really angry. I'd never seen him this worked up. "Where'd you get it?" he asked again. I licked my lips nervously. I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't going to drop Alan in the soup, and I knew he wouldn't own up by himself. Even Alan's best friends knew he's not the bravest in the world, but my mind was stuck in low gear and I couldn't think of a reasonable lie. Luckily, Steve stepped in. "Sir, it's mine," he said. "Yours?" Mr. Dalton blinked slowly. "I found it near the bus stop, sir," Steve said. "Some old guy threw it away. I thought it looked interesting, so I picked it up. I was going to ask about it later at the end of class." "Oh." Mr. Dalton tried not to look flattered, but I could tell he was. "That's different. Nothing wrong with an inquisitive mind." "Sit down, Steve." Steve sat. Mr. Dalton stuck a bit of blue tack on the flyer and pinned it to the blackboard. "Long ago," he said, tapping the flyer, "there used to be real freak shows. Greedy con men crammed malformed people into cages and—" "Sir, what's malformed mean?" somebody asked. "Someone who doesn't look ordinary," Mr. Dalton said. A person with 3 arms or 2 noses, somebody with no legs, somebody very short or very tall. The conmen put these poor people who were no different to you or me, except in looks, on display and called them freaks. They charged the public to stare at them and invited them to laugh and tease. They treated the so-called freaks like animals, paid them little, beat them, dressed them in rags, never allowed them to wash. That's cruel, sir, Deliana Price, a girl near the front, said. Yes, he agreed. Freak shows were cruel, monstrous creations. That's why I got angry when I saw this. He tore down the flyer. They were banned years ago, but every so often you'll hear a rumour that they're still going strong. Do you think the Cirque du Freak is a real freak show? I asked. Mr. Dalton studied the flyer again, then shook his head. I doubt it, he said. Probably just a cruel hoax. Still, he added, if it was real, I hope nobody here would dream of going. Oh, no, sir, we all said quickly. Because freak shows were terrible, he said. They pretended to be like proper circuses, but they were cesspits of evil. Anybody who went to one would be just as bad as the people running it. You'd have to be really twisted to want to go to one of those, sir, Steve agreed. And then he looked at me, winked, and mouthed the words, "We're going." Okay. Chapter 3. Steve persuaded Mr. Dalton to let him keep the flyer. He said he wanted it for his bedroom wall. Mr. Dalton wasn't going to give it to him, but then changed his mind. He cut off the address at the bottom before handing it over. After school, the 4 of us, me, Steve, Alan Morris and Tommy Jones, gathered in the yard, studied the glossy flyer. It's got to be a fake, I said. Why? Alan asked. They don't allow freak shows anymore, I told him. Wolfmen and snake boys were outlawed years ago. Mr. Dalton said so. It's not a fake, Alan insisted. Where'd you get it? Tommy asked. I stole it, Alan said softly. It belongs to my big brother. Alan's big brother was Tony Morris, who used to be the school's biggest bully until he got thrown out. He's huge and mean and ugly. You stole it from Tony? I gasped. Have you got a death wish? He won't know it was me, Alan said. He had it in a pair of trousers that Mum threw into the washing machine. I stuck a blank piece of paper. When I took this out, he'll think the ink got washed off. Smart, Steve nodded. Where did Tony get it? I asked. There was a guy passing them out in the alley, Alan said. One of the circus performers. A Mr. Crepsley. The one with the spider? Tommy asked. Yeah, Alan answered, only he didn't have the spider with him. It was night and Tony was on his way back from the pub. Tony's not old enough to get served in a pub, but hangs around with older guys who buy drinks for him. Mr. Crepsley handed the paper to Tony and told him they're a travelling freak show who put on secret performances in towns and cities across the world. He said you have to have a flyer to buy tickets, and they only gave them to people they trust. They're not supposed to tell anyone else about the show. I only found out about it because Tony was in high spirits, the way he gets when he drinks, and couldn't keep his mouth shut. How much are the tickets? Steve asked. £15 each, Alan said. £15? We all shouted. Nobody's going to pay £15 to see a bunch of freaks, Steve snorted. I would, I said. Me too, Tommy agreed. And me, Alan added. Sure, Steve said, but we don't have £15 to throw away, so it's academic, isn't it? What does academic mean? Alan asked. It means we can't afford the tickets, so it doesn't matter if we would buy them or not, Steve explained. It's easy to say you would buy something if you know you can't. How much do we have? Alan asked. 2p a penny, I laughed. It was something my dad often said. I'd love to go, Tommy said sadly. It sounds great. He studied the picture again. Mr. Dalton didn't think too much of it, Alan said. That's what I mean, Tommy said. If Sir doesn't like it, it must be super. Anything that adults hate is normally brilliant. Are we sure we don't have enough? I asked. Maybe they've discounts for children. I don't think children are allowed in, Alan said, but he told me how much he had anyway. £5.70. I've got £12 exactly, Steve said. I have £6.85, Tommy said. And I have £8.25, I told them. That's more than £30 in all, I said, adding it up in my head. We get our pocket money tomorrow. If we pool our But the tickets are nearly sold out, Alan interrupted. The first show was yesterday. It finishes Tuesday. If we go, it'll have to be tomorrow night or Saturday because our parents won't let us out any other night. The guy you gave Tony the flyer said the tickets for both those nights were almost gone. We'd have to buy them tonight. Well, so much for that, I said, putting on a brave face. Maybe not, Steve said. My mum keeps a wad of money in a jar at home. I could borrow some and put it back when we get our pocket money. You mean steal? I asked. I mean borrow, he snapped. It's only stealing if you don't put it back. What do you say? How do we get the tickets? Tommy asked. It's a school night. We wouldn't be let out. I can sneak out, Steve said. I'll buy them. But Mr. Dalton snipped off the address. I reminded him. How will you know where to go? I memorised it, he grinned. Now, are we going to stand here all night making up excuses, or are we going to go for it? We looked at each other, then one by one nodded silently. Right, Steve said. We hurry home, grab our money, and meet back here. Tell your parents you forgot a book or something. We'll lump the money together, and I'll add the rest from the pot at home. What if you can't steal? I mean, borrow the money, I asked. He shrugged. Then the deal's off. But we won't know unless we try. Now hurry. With that, he sprinted away. Moments later, making up our minds, Tommy, Alan, and me ran too.